Hello everybody. Next up we play host to our old hypocritical foes from Sheffield United. Kick-off on Saturdays at 3 PM and the trains are on strike again. Check before you leave as usual. So the Blades then. Well, they got promoted in second place somehow last season, which, given the progress of the three promoted sides thus far this season, seems to be rather a sad indictment of the gulf that is developing between the top two divisions these days. So far this season they've gained just the 1 point, a 2-2 draw at home to Everton, who may yet be grateful themselves for the apparent weakness of the three promoted sides. Last week, of course, Sheffield United plumbed new depths in going down 8-0 at home to the Geordies, a match possibly unique for the fact that each of the 8 goals came from a different goalscorer. Whilst the rest of the world was busy laughing their socks off, their legal people were probably trying to work out how to pin the blame on Carlos Tevez, using only 2 bent journalists and a mad ex-High Court judge. Back in January, they were operating under a transfer embargo, the result of their dispensing with such trivial matters as paying for the players that they'd actually bought. The embargo lasted until April, by which time they've managed a cup run, the proceeds of which, along with a few rearrangements of transfer deals, were enough to keep their creditors sweet. All of which meant that they were able to bring in some players this summer. No fewer than 7, according to Daisy. The average fee paid, though, suggests that they've got one shrewd eye on next season. The first arrival, for example, was Aris Ben Slimane, a central midfielder who fetched up from Brøndby for an initial £1 million. This was a sum deemed sufficient enough to trigger the Danish-born Tunisian international's release clause. It doesn't seem that Heckingbottom has been totally sure about the player, who has made just the 2 appearances so far, the second being a sub-appearance in last week's home trouncing. They spent nearly 4 times as much on winger-cum-striker Benny Traore, his initial £3.9 million fee having the potential to rise to £4.8 million, depending on, well, it's all probably academic, really. He's played in all league matches this term, being another sat on the bench last week, hoping upon hope not to get the dreaded nod from the manager to warm up and get on. Signed from Swedish outfit Häcken, he's been capped at Ivory Coast under-21 level, which does raise the odd eyebrow over work permit issues. He's yet to open his account on these shores. £5 million was spent on central defender Austin Trusty, which, despite all appearances to the contrary, appears to be not a made-up name. He'd been at Arsenal since the 2022 winter window, but a measure of the impact he made in Islington can probably be gauged by the fact that he was Birmingham City's Player of the Year last season. He was probably overjoyed to be an unused sub last weekend. He's broken through to the full USA squad, picking up 2 caps this year. They had a scrap with Burnley over the potential services of Vinicius Souza, who eventually arrived from Belgian outfit Lauren, no me neither, for £10 million after they made the player an offer he, or more likely his agent, couldn't refuse. The Brazilian under-20 international lasted the whole 90 minutes of last week's St Cornelius Day massacre and should be available this weekend once the counselling is finished. Top scorer Gustavo Hamia arrived from Coventry for £15 million, thus instantly getting over the disappointment of Coventry's losing out to Luton in the playoff final. Brazilian by birth, he was adopted by parents from the Netherlands and has Dutch caps at both under-18 and under-21 level. He has yet to gain any full international honours, though. Tom Davies' arrival on a free from Everton was a bit of a come-down for a player who only 5 years ago was deemed to be the 7th most promising player in England. No, really he was. He became the youngest player to captain the Toffee Men, and he was a regular in the England under-21 team. However, he suffered more than most with the revolving door managerial policy that seems to be in place at Goodison Park, never quite gaining the confidence of anyone who had their 5 minutes at the helm. This season, he's usually started from the bench at Bramall Lane. Final arrival was 21-year-old Villa Academy product Cameron Archer. He spent the last 3 seasons away from Birmingham on loan at Solihull Moors, Preston and last season Middlesbrough, where he managed 11 goals in 20 league appearances. He looked quite isolated against Newcastle as all the mayhem went on further back. Still, he'll have had a nice rest. They will be welcoming back Ollie McBurney, who will be back after a ban for complaining to a referee that he'd had his shirt pulled. Now, that might have been a typical case of PGMOL's usual incompetence, but it's fair to say that McBurney's record on and off the pitch is somewhat, well, you might say, checkered. Drink driving and assault are just two of the things he's found himself up before the beak for, though he was acquitted of one of the assault charges when his defence of "I wasn't stamping on him, I was trying to step over him, honest," was eventually accepted. Still, you get the picture. Let us move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. Now, not content with importing players who have passed their best, the Saudis are trying to do the same with referees, announcing plans to try and recruit officials from PGMOL, who countered with a statement that is one of the most unintentionally funny things I've ever heard from that least funny of organisations. The statement read, "Any interest in our officials from other leagues demonstrates the strong reputation of English officials across the globe." Yeah, they really said that. Elsewhere, it's troubled times for this week's opponent's more likeable neighbours, as Sheffield Wednesday, where, hurt at criticism from the support which he considers to have crossed the line, owner Dafon Chanziri has announced that he will no longer be putting money into the club. Whilst Chanziri doesn't consider the club to be up for sale, he said he will consider listening to offers. In the meantime, one wonders if he has considered loaning the club money instead of pumping cash in. I have it on good authority that with interest rates until recently displaying an upward trend, there are good returns to be made out of football by charging a club several points over base rate. It's a thought, isn't it? Let's move on to us. And midweek, well, it was job done, though admittedly not the most aesthetically pleasing of styles. The squad was very much a reserve selection, with the boss banking on that group being good enough to see us through. He was right. Just. I'd expect a stronger selection policy for the next round. Please. Those who had the day off in midweek will be suitably rested and refreshed for this one. The only injury issue is that of Cresswell, whose hamstring will keep him out of contention. Other than that, we may see Dinos pushing for a start if Agerd is causing concern. Though, let's face it, he won't be the last person who Salah takes 3 buses and a cab out of his way to fall over his leg. So on to the prediction. Well, I haven't read much about the match this week, but I would be absolutely gobsmacked if the comments from Paul Heckingbottom didn't contain a few words that mentioned the phrase, "the need to get a reaction," after last week's result. We saw how they played, having set out their stall this season by going to Tottenham for the draw, sneaking a lead and then placing all 11 players on the goal line for the rest of the match. So for them, a reaction would probably be getting a point. At the end of the day, one would hope that the quality on our side would prevail. So, with a full squad to select from, I will be placing the £2.50 I was going to pay towards keeping our world-renowned, yeah right, referees in this country on a home win. Please, Mr. Winston, if you will, make that 3-1 to us. Enjoy the game.